this video may come as a surprise to some people, but it's on how I get my clients to track their calories. Yes, me, Josh, the coach, who is very vocal about non-tracking strategies. It's just to prove my point that I'm not biased against tracking calories. My argument isn't against tracking calories. It's against coaches who get all their clients to track their calories. My argument is making sure that tracking is the right option for the client. You've gone through a process, through a criteria, which I call the golden behavior criteria, to determine whether it is appropriate for a client to track in the first place. And it's not to do with eating disorders. It's got to do with, can they do it? Will it have a positive impact on their life? And do they want to do it? If you've gone through that and you realize that yes, tracking is appropriate, then here is how you can get your clients to track their calories. And this is a process that I use, and it's using minimums and ranges. And it really helps take the stress and the pressure off your clients when they are tracking, especially clients who really struggle to hit certain targets, or they have perfectionist tendencies about getting it exactly spot on every single time. Now, I know some coaches out there, they say, just have a protein and a fiber target and let everything else fall into place. That is not bad advice, but I actually prefer a different approach that gets all three macros involved. And my reason behind this is that a lot of clients that I work with, they tend to enjoy exercise. So whilst you could say, yeah, cool, just hit protein and fiber, let everything else fall into place. If someone really cares about exercise and they're under on carbs, that could affect their performance. Or if someone is, tends to be a bit of a fat phobic person, maybe they might be under on their fats, which could affect their health. What I do instead is I actually set macro minimums. We look at minimums for protein, for carbs, for fats, for muscle, for performance, for health, and then we set a range for the calories. Let's say, for example, when it comes to protein, instead of just saying, oh, all right, hit 2 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, what I would recommend doing is setting a minimum of 1.6. And then for carbs, obviously depending on the person and their level of exercise and how much they have to play with, all right, we might say, okay, this person might be 3 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. And then when it comes to fats, your minimum fat target is 20% of your calories. You could also throw a minimum fiber target in there, or just aim for a minimum serves of fruit and veg per day. Now, there's two key reasons why I adopt this approach. The first one is that it lowers the bar and it makes it easier for the client to jump over. Now, think about a client who really struggles to eat enough protein. If you then say, all right, 2 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, that bar could be really high for them. It might seem really far away. It might seem so challenging, and they constantly fall short. Whereas if you can lower the bar to 1.6, imagine if they're currently only hitting like 1.2, okay, they only have to have another, basically another extra serve or a serve and a half of protein per day to reach their minimum, okay? Whereas if it's 2, it's nearly double, okay? So you're lowering the bar and going you're hitting your minimum standards if you do this. And one thing I'm really big on is self-efficacy. So a belief in our ability to change a certain thing. One of the core determinants of self-efficacy is past experience. So if the bar is set really high at 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, they constantly fall short, it's not gonna do wonders for their self-efficacy, all right? It's gonna damage their confidence and belief in themselves. Even if, imagine, they were hitting, let's say 1.7 to 1.8, they're still above their minimum, but they're not hitting the target that they're meant to, their optimal target. Whereas if you bring it down a little bit, it makes it easy to jump over, and when they reach that target and exceed it, it boosts their self-efficacy, which boosts their confidence in the future as well. Not just with protein, but maybe with other things as well, right? They're getting some confidence, they're getting some runs on the board, they know they're getting some momentum as well. So that's the first reason, all right? Lower the bar, it makes it easy to jump over. The second thing is it reduces the psychological stress of going over the target. How many clients have you had in the past that freak out when they go over their carb or their fat target, right? It's probably especially their carb target, right? Oh my God, I've gone over my carbs today, it's okay. And what this does is by putting it at a minimum, we're actually saying, I want you to go over this target. Don't freak out. In fact, you're doing a good thing by going over the target. And it just takes away that psychological stress, that pressure, that anxiety of feeling, oh my God, I've gone over. When what we've done is we've just reframed it, we've changed it to say, actually, we do want you to go over this target. You're not running the risk of, oh my God, have I had too much, when really they haven't. And then when it comes to the calorie side of things, what I do is I look at a range. Say someone's on 2,500 calories, rather than it being 2,500, it could be a range of between 24 to 26 or 23 to 2,700. It just allows for some day-to-day fluctuations of what their day looks like, or even their hunger, and it kind of promoting a bit more internal regulation rather than having to hit an exact target. So it accounts for some fluctuations. It helps that person who is quite a perfectionist go I don't have to hit this exact target. Okay, you can just be somewhere in between this range, and it's not the end of the world. If your like target's 2500 and you hit like 2450, like that's okay. If you hit 2650, that's also okay. Like you're in between this range of 23 to 2700. And then we look at the weekly average, for example. Now, one thing that you will see, and you'll probably have to explain it to clients quite a few times, especially ones who have tracked in the past, is that when they hit their macro minimums, they're going to be way under their actual calories. So let's say, for example, we use the 75 kilo male, 1.6 protein, 3 grams of carbs, 20% fats with a 2500 calorie target. If the client actually hits their minimums bang on the dot, 1.6 protein will be about 448 calories. 3 grams of carbs will be 840 calories, and the fats will be about 500 calories. So if we add that all up, it's about 1,788 calories. So there's quite a big gap. There's still about 700 calories the client has to play with, right, between nearly 1,800 mark and the 2,500 mark. And they might be going, oh, but I've hit my macros, I've hit my targets, I'm still way under. And that's when you just have to reinforce. Yes, the goal is to go over those minimums. We're just hitting the baseline, right, but I want you to go over it. And you can basically fill that however you like, which again creates a bit more flexibility based on what their day looks like, even what their preferences are. But you as the coach, you go, right, at least I know that this client is getting enough protein, enough carbs, and enough fats for muscle, for recovery, for retention, for performance, and for health. But again, you're probably gonna have to remind them a few times of this, especially when they have experience with it. So just to wrap up, this is a tracking approach from the non-tracking guy. And I think it's just a much more stress-free and flexible approach that clients can take. It lowers the bar, it increases their confidence, it increases their self-efficacy, it can even boost their adherence, but it also takes away the stress and the psychological pressure of being either precise, or for those clients who really do freak out if they go over the targets because we're telling them to go over the target. And the calories, we're having a bit of a range to be flexible and looking at like, day-to-day variances, but then looking at the weekly average as well. It's more just proactively telling them these things. We might set a target normally of 2,500 calories and then after the fact say, oh, it's okay as long as you're within a range. But if we're upfront about it and say, you can fall in between this range for this reason and it will be okay, every week or even every day, they're gonna feel a little bit less pressure, a little bit less stress and anxiety about tracking as well. So we're just trying to take a bit of the pressure off the process, especially if the stress can affect their adherence or how they go about things or how they feel about it as well, or the client experience. If you have any questions about my approach to tracking or about the macro tracking golden behavior criteria that I alluded to earlier, where it's a framework that you put your clients through to assess whether tracking is right for them or not, feel free to comment below. But stay tuned because there's going to be a lot more non-tracking videos coming out. What non-tracking coaching looks like, how to do it, how to assess, and then all the different ways that you can coach clients without using macros. But I wanted to start this series with a bit of a shock factor and showing you how I, the non-tracking guy, gets his clients to track their calories when it's right for them. Until next time, peace.